All right, good morning. Welcome to our Encouraging Truth series. We are super glad you're joining us today. We wanted to do this particular series because of the whole coronavirus thing, and we just wanted people to be encouraged every Monday morning. So hopefully this will encourage you this week. And for some reason, this virus is lasting a lot longer than we thought. So we're just going to keep doing our Monday morning sessions because it seems to hopefully help people, and that's kind of what we want to do. So first, if you don't know anything about our ministry, you can go online to womensbiblestudy.com. There you can find out everything you want to know about us. Our goal for this ministry is for you to be able to watch Bible study anytime, anywhere. So we can, we produce 2 different videotapes every single week of a lesson, and then we put it out there on YouTube and Roku, and you can download our Women's Bible Study app for your phone. We're podcasting now through Spotify and iTunes, so lots of different ways to watch us, so that's kind of like our goal. So today, I want to encourage you with this thought, and here it is. Encouraging truth number 25 is, just because you can doesn't always mean that you should. Here's my thinking. Just because you live in a state where, let's say, marijuana is legal, it doesn't always mean you should smoke it. Just because you legally can have sex with someone other than your husband, kind of probably doesn't mean you should. Just because you legally can go to a strip club, let's say, doesn't mean you should. And then I added my own. You'll love this. For those of you that know me, just because you can eat vegetables probably doesn't mean you should. I always say just because you can eat peanut M&Ms probably means you should do that. But anyway, my point for today is we're going to talk about the coronavirus. We're going to talk about Christians. We're going to talk about churches that are opening. But there's an underlying point. We're just using the virus and the churches as like an illustration. So I would say the pandemic's going to be gone in the next couple months, and it's not even going to be a talking point. But for now, I want us to take this as an illustration for the underlying point that sometimes in life, there are things that you can do, but I'm not even certain that they're actually good for you to do. So that's where we're going to head today. Now, the question I want to ask is, amidst this whole crisis, there are churches that are opening, some legally, some probably illegally. The question is, should they do that? And should I even go to a church right now with all of this going on? And if you ask a dozen pastors, you're going to get probably a dozen different answers. If you talk to Andy Stanley, let's just say, Andy says he's not allowing anyone back into his church for, until 2021. And his reasoning is because people are afraid. He's worried about the people. He doesn't think large gatherings is probably a really wise thing to do right now. And his whole thought process is for now, like not forever, but just for such a time as this. Now, if you talk to Greg Laurie, he opened up, but not inside a building. It's outside, it's underneath a tent. But he has very, very strict rules. Like if you're going to come to a service, you need to wear a face mask and you need to social distance. So that's very clear for them if you want to join us. On the off end of that, if you are like John MacArthur, he basically is saying to the world that nobody can tell me what to do. Nobody can tell our church what to do. We can do what we want. Legally, we can open, or I don't even think he can at this particular time, but he's doing it anyway. And he just kind of feels that the government can't tell him what he can and can't do with his church. So he's had his services, and there was no face masks and no social distancing, and he thinks that he has the right to do that. Anyway, I was wondering this about Arizona. So I started thinking, okay, Andy Stanley and Greg Laurie and John MacArthur, they all have completely different views on this. So what does our state think? And our state in Arizona, Governor Ducey says this: we believe churches are essential. And you and I know that they are. But he's asking churches to care about the health and the safety of people. So he's saying this: if you open your church, please social distance. Please have your congregation wear face masks. Try with everything in you to have people watch online. Let's not congregate in big churches for the time being, not forever, but just for for now. Limit the number of people. I was really proud of one of the churches that is in Phoenix. It's a very large church, CCV. And it was amazing to me because they actually opened their church, but they shut down their whole upper section of the church, and then they social distance all the chairs, and if you go, you have to wear a face mask. That's just the way it is. And I was really proud of them for doing that and for kind of caring about what the governor has to say. But for a lot of people, they kind of don't go along with that. For a lot of people, their response is a little bit like John MacArthur's, like, no one's going to tell me what I can and can't do. I have a right. I have a legal right. I can worship when I want. I can worship how I want, where I want. And there seems to be this really weird defiance about this. Now, for those of you that think I dislike John MacArthur, that's not true at all. I learned most of my deep theology from John MacArthur. I've been on a gazillion of his cruises. I've listened to him. I can't even. So this isn't about me not liking him. This is about me being very, very disappointed in this almost arrogant attitude that he seems to be portraying out there. So I want to talk about this because there may be a legal right, especially in Arizona, to open a church, but the question is, should they? I mean, that's a good question. In other words, the Bible talks a lot about wisdom and making wise choices. So just because you can, does it always mean that you should? Now, to start this off, I want to explain to you the little journey road that I've been on, because if anyone was in that defiant category, it probably was me. When the virus hit, we were told to have that 15-day stay at home, slow the spread, and I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was some weird political thing, and everything about it annoyed me. I told a friend of mine, I said, she called me one day and she said, what are your thoughts on this? And I said, 12,000 people tops are going to get this thing. Okay, I'm totally wrong on that. I bought the whole, it's just like the flu. So I was on that bandwagon. Many more people died from the flu. And, at the time, maybe they did. But in all my years that I've been alive, I have never, ever known anyone personally who died from the flu. They got better. I've just never seen that before. But I realized that that's not what COVID is actually about. A month before the whole pandemic hit, Rob had this barbecue trailer. It was at another church, and it's this cool trailer that he built. And so he wanted to take it from the other church, and he was taking it to a ministry called Deep Within. Deep Within, the guy who runs it, his name is Lee, super awesome guy. Lee has this big heart, and he has this infectious personality, and everyone loves Lee. So we took the barbecue trailer there, and he was so excited. He showed us where to park it, and he had all these great ideas for what to do with the barbecue trailer for ministry. And we pulled out, and unbeknownst to us, that a few months later, Lee would be dead of COVID. He tested positive, couldn't breathe, went to the hospital, put on a ventilator, eventually taken off of the ventilator, tried to go into rehab, and he passed away. There was a man who loved Jesus, loved helping others, and now he's gone. And that was just the first. A second was somebody that Rob knew down at another ministry that he works with, and just gone. We were watching Waters World the other day, and Jesse Waters put up a picture of his friend in an interview that he had just had with his friend, and his friend just died of COVID. So see, it's just this weird pandemic. We've never known anyone to die from the flu, and all of a sudden we know all these people that are dying from this horrible pandemic. Rob said to me one day, he said, Lisa, it's like Russian roulette. You just never know. You don't know, because a lot of people get it and die, and a lot of people get it and they have no symptoms, and a lot of people get it and they get sick but they get better. You just don't know which one of those you're going to be. My cousin went on a family trip, and there were 10 of them that went. All 10 of them got COVID. They all got better. They were very sick, but they got better. We had one of our guest speakers, and he got it, and his wife got it, and his mother-in-law got it. And they were very sick, but they all got better. And so I think what I've learned over these last few months is this is kind of ridiculous mentality that I had kind of isn't. Because I know a lot of people die from the flu, but This seems to be deadly and just jumps, and we don't even understand it that well yet. So as Christians, what should we do? What should our attitude be? And it seems biblically this, that we have to care about people more than we do about our rights. And I'm thankful that where we do our Bible study is in a big room with lots of tables and lots of women, but they've shut that whole facility down. And I'm thankful that I don't have to make that choice. Should we go back or should we not? Because they're not even allowing us back, which actually is probably good, because I don't think anyone is really ready to go back and congregate in a big crowd. I tend to be feeling a little bit more like Andy Stanley. For such a time as this, like for the time being, let's just watch a Bible study on Roku or on your TV or on YouTube or on your apps or on Spotify or iTunes. Like, there's other places to watch it where you don't have to be with a big, large crowd. I was thinking we could just meet little places. You can watch church on Sundays online with, a couple of your friends. You say to me, but Lisa, people need community. And I totally get that. But then go have coffee with them. Go have lunch with them. I just met with 2 girls the other day. We went to lunch together, hung out. Invite them to your home. Invite them for a Bible study. Like I'll say this over and over, not forever, just for now. And not even because we have to, but how about because we care about people and we want to? Because think of this, if you are a follower of Jesus in, let's say, China doesn't have the big monster churches that we have. Like, they do have state churches you can go to, but if you want really good, Bible, you're going to have to go to an underground church for that. And they meet in homes. And we were there. We went to China quite a few years ago, and we went to one of the underground churches. And it was so amazing because they never showed up at the same time. They showed up, they didn't want anyone to see crowds of people going into this apartment. When you got there, someone cooked food, someone got up and did a Bible study. That's how the early church met. So I don't know why this is such a problem now to say, look, let's for the time being just meet in smaller groups. It's not about going to this big, large crowd at the moment. But think about no other time in history can you do what we're doing. You can sing and worship and pray and listen to great pastors and teachers and Bible studies in your homes. Because we have that capability now. So my thinking is this, we need to make the worst of time the best of time. And that's what I think maybe this whole pandemic is teaching Christians, that we need to learn that we are the church. The church is not that big building that we go to, but we're the church. We're the people. We're the followers of Christ. And we should be the church to those around us that are in need while we're here. So I'll tell you my turning point when I realized all this. And it was something my cousin actually put on Facebook. But before I show this to you, you have to know that I hate wearing masks. Okay, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I can't breathe. I think a lot of it is just because maybe I'm a little more vain than I should be. Because I'm like, you're ruining my lipstick, mask. You're ruining my blush because the mask has to, like, it's ridiculous, I know, and some of you are just rolling your eyes at that right now. But when you wear a mask, it's like no one even can see you or talk to you. They don't even know if you're smiling at them. It's just, I don't like the whole thing. So when it first started, I took a mask and I would put it over my mouth and I would put it under my nose. Because I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. I can't breathe. It's kind of ridiculous. And then I saw this on Facebook. My cousin put this up. But in humility, consider others as more important than yourselves. And it's a picture of a face mask. And honestly, God used that verse and that Facebook post, it stabbed me in the heart, is kind of how I felt about it. Because I was always more concerned about me and my feelings and my rights, and no one's going to tell me how to wear a mask. I realized this when I first went to the grocery store. It was right when you had to wear one. I put it, of course, below my nose like I always did. I'm in line, totally 6 feet away from the next person, and this lady literally looks at me and says, "Don't get near me! Don't come close to me! You're not wearing your mask properly." Now, at first I was like totally taken back because I'm like, who does that? But as I put my mask up, I started realizing maybe she's really scared. Maybe she has cancer and she doesn't want to get COVID. Maybe she has somebody who is in her home that is very sick and she's trying to protect them. Like, I don't know, maybe she's just a control freak and she just likes to yell at people. I don't know, but it really actually shouldn't matter. Either way, I had to stop and say, what is my response as a follower of Christ? And the answer was Philippians 2:3, that you have to, in humility, consider others as more important than yourself. So now, in a store, if people are around, I do my best to put my mask over my nose. Now, if I'm walking down an aisle and no one's there, then I'll pull it down just because I need to breathe. But it made me more aware of the people around me. And I think that's what we need to do. Because if someone has an underlying condition, even though I'm not sick, maybe just knowing that I'm wearing a mask makes them feel just a little more safer. And so as a Christian, I think that's what we need to do. For me personally, I needed to get a grip on my attitude. And some of you here, you're just like, it's a conspiracy. I'm like, I don't know, I doubt it, because people are dying. It's a conspiracy that it came from China. Well, I can't answer any of those questions. I just know it's here. And I know it's wreaking havoc, and a lot of people have died because of it. And so I want to start looking around and saying, I'm going to care more for other people than I am my own personal feelings. So let's talk about this, about the government. Like, if the Arizona state government tells me that I must wear a mask, what does the Bible say about that? And the Bible actually talks about this and says, hey, Lisa, if the governor says to do this, then you biblically have to do it. Now, if the government tells you to go kill someone, well, of course no, because that comes up against something God has already said. I'll explain that in a minute. Let's look at a couple of these verses. Romans 13 says this, everyone must submit to governing authorities. For all authority comes from God, and those in positions of authority have been placed there by God. Your governor, the president of the United States, the vice president, they have been placed there by God. We need to really grasp that. So anyone who rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and they will be punished. For the authorities do not strike fear in people who are doing right, but in those who are doing wrong. Would you like to live without fear of the authorities that do what's right and they're going to honor you? The authorities are God's servants sent for your good. But if you're doing wrong, of course you should be afraid, for they have the power to punish you. They are God's servants sent for the very purpose of punishing those who do what is wrong. So as much as we hate the fact that the government tells us what to do, God says it's our job as Christians to follow and obey the governor. And the Arizona government says wear a mask and social distance and don't go in crowds. And here's why. Not because they don't want us to believe in Jesus. Please get that. They're not saying don't go to church because we don't want you to believe in Jesus. Here's the reason. It's because they want life to go back to normal. They know churches have big crowds of people. They're like, please, we don't care if you believe in Jesus or not. We don't want you to congregate because we don't want you to get other people sick, or we don't want you to get sick. Probably this will go on for 6 months, maybe a year. I don't know. But we need to do what the Bible says, which is listen to what the government says and do what they say. It's a God, that's something God has told us we have to do. Here's another thought. Dusty, most of you who know Dusty, he loves to go to the gym. And of course they shut down all the gyms here, which was devastating to him. So he had a friend that called him one day and he said, hey, I found a gym that's open. Now all gyms are closed. They're supposed to be, government shut them down, but one is still open. So Dusty said, should I go? I said, you know what, Dusty, here's the deal. Can you? Probably. It's open. You can go through the doors. Should you? I don't know. I think the Bible's pretty clear that the government says no right now because they're trying to stop the spread. So I think you probably need to obey the governor. Because like we said, if the governor said we should, go take on an extra spouse or go murder our neighbor, or of course we would be like, we can't do that because it goes up against what God has already said. If the government comes in and says, you're not allowed to share your faith, well, of course we would have to come up against that because God has already spoken on that. The Great Commission, go out, tell people about Jesus. That's our job. The government's not telling us that. We see this whole, when we at this point of If God has said something and the government says something, we always obey God over that. But the Bible doesn't talk about face masks and social distancing, and that doesn't come up against any biblical mandate. I'll show you how this works. Acts 4, Peter and John had been thrown into prison for telling people about Jesus. Look what happens here in verse 16. What should we do with these men? They asked each other. We can't deny that they've performed a miraculous sign, and everyone in Jerusalem knows about it. But to keep them from spreading their propaganda any further, we must warn them not to speak to anyone in Jesus' name. So they called the apostles back in, commanded them never again to speak or teach in the name of Jesus. But Peter and John replied, "Do you think God wants us to obey you rather than him? We cannot stop telling about everything we've seen and heard." And the council threatened them further, but they finally let them go because they didn't know how to punish them without starting a riot. For everyone was praising God. So here you have the situation where they're told, don't tell anyone about Jesus. And they're like, I'm sorry, that goes against what God has said. I obey God over you. We see this in Exodus. Look at this. Then Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, gave this order to the Hebrew midwives, because at this particular time, the nation of Israel, the Hebrews, they kept having kids and kept having kids. And so the nation was growing, as we know, upwards of 2 million. And Pharaoh was getting scared. He was getting nervous because he didn't want to take over from the Hebrews. So he told these midwives, look what he told them. When you help the Hebrew women as they give birth, watch as they deliver. If the baby's a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live. But because the midwives feared God, they refused to obey the king's orders. They allowed the boys to live too. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives, why have you done this? Why have you allowed the boys to live? Here's what's interesting. The Hebrew women lie. Look at this. The Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. This is what they're told Pharaoh. The midwives replied, they're more vigorous and have their babies so quickly that we can't get there in time. So God was good to the midwives, and the Israelites continued to multiply, growing more and more powerful. And because of the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. And you're like, well, I thought you're not supposed to lie. Well, you're not. But this lie protected a lot of people and a lot of babies, and God was okay with it. In other words, if what the government tells you flies in the face of what God has already said, you always obey God over government. But that isn't what's going on. That isn't what this is. California, Arizona, your state, wherever you live, the government isn't trying to control the churches. They are trying to control the virus. And see, some of you were like me. This is stupid. Face masks are stupid. That's not going to stop the virus. And that may be true, but it may be not true, because our numbers are rapidly declining in Arizona because people are actually doing this. Now, is there another reason why? I don't know. I was in the post office the other day, and this man was standing there defiantly, no mask, didn't even have one around his neck, wasn't planning on wearing one. He stood there for 15 minutes doing all of his mail stuff. He walked outside. I just happened to walk outside and see him. He has a pin of a cross that he's wearing. I thought he was a pastor because he looked really familiar to me. So I looked at him and I said, how in the world do you get away with not wearing a mask in there? And he goes, because I think they're stupid. And I don't think they do any good at all. And I said, well, I get that. And I'm looking at this cross, and I'm like, I don't think that represents Jesus very well at all. I didn't tell him that, but in my mind, I'm thinking that. Some people will go on to say this. I'll just trust God and have faith he won't let me get sick. I'm going to go ahead and go to church because I'm just going to trust that God's going to protect me. But look what Jesus says when Satan pretty much tells him the same thing. Look at this, Luke 4:9. Then the devil took him, Jesus, to Jerusalem, to the highest point of the temple, and said, if you're the Son of God, jump off. For the scriptures say, he will order his angels to protect and guard you. In other words, hey, Jesus, jump, go ahead. The angels aren't going to let anything happen to you. It's like people, hey, I can go to church without a face mask. I can go without social distancing. I'm just going to trust God that he's going to just protect me and make sure I don't get it. Now, can God do that? Well, of course he could. If Jesus had jumped, of course the angels could have done it. But look what Jesus says in verse 12. The scriptures also say, you must not test the Lord your God. Do not test God. The point is this: just because you feel the freedom to do something, it might not be the wise thing to do. For the time being, let's just find new ways to learn and grow in our faith without doing it in this big, large group setting. For Bible study, we're asking women, host a Bible study at your home. Play our videos on Wednesday morning. Do whatever you need to do. Get 3, 4 women, like whatever. Limit it, not forever, but just until we can get back to normal. Because I know for me, I don't want to come back to Bible study and have people fearful. If I'm teaching a lesson and all of a sudden someone coughs and then everyone in the audience isn't paying attention because they're freaked out because they think that person has COVID, and now it's not worth it to me. So for now, until Bible study resumes the way it used to, let's just be the church. If you know someone who needs company, invite them over. And know this, you may be free to go to church. Your church may be free to open. You may be free not to wear a face mask or not to social distance. But maybe right now, the wisest thing to do is just obey what the governor asks us to do. Galatians 5:13 says this: "For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters, but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. For the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself." Hopefully, that gives you a little clarity for today, and I hope you have a really good week this week.